because confidence isn't something you do. Confidence doesn't come as a result of something. Confidence comes by being you and peeling back those layers and living in your most authentic version of yourself, your most authentic voice, obviously with some candor and some conviction and some emotional intelligence built in. But at the end of the day, being authentic isn't about doing anything better or being anything more. It's about undoing everything that isn't you.
Welcome to Great Practice, Great Life by Atticus Incorporated. What if you could hang out with successful small and solo law firm attorneys, ask them about their successes and failures, their business strategies and mindset habits, then take an insight or two to guide your own growth in your practice? Each week, Steve Riley shares an in-depth look at how to work less while maintaining high client service standards, reduce your stress levels while growing your income, and find time to make changes when you are time-starved. Steve is a lawyer coach for more than 20 years and a former trial attorney. His goal is to provide strategies to help you balance your lives and grow your practice. Now, here's Steve.
Hey, it's Steve Riley. Welcome to this episode of Great Practice, Great Life. And today I bring back Barb Betts because Barb totally crushed her prior episode on relationship-based marketing. Like, how do you get more clients? How do you make more money? And at the end, she left us with a cliffhanger. And it just doesn't work for me. I was like, right when we were wrapping up the episode, she hits me with this cliffhanger. And I'm like, no, don't leave us there. You have to come back and unpack what you just said. So, Barb, do you remember what you said?
I do remember it very well.
All right. Tell me what you said because it was a cliffhanger for me. I'm like,
Yeah.
you have to come back. You have to come back.
What I shared was, building relationships with others is so important. It's critical. It's the foundation of life and business. Relationships aren't just part of your business, they are your business. However, the first pillar in what I teach is be authentically you. And I know the word authenticity is thrown around like a buzzword. Trust me, I'm very well aware of that. It's one of my pet peeves. But you can't have an authentic relationship with anyone else till you have one with yourself. And so it's my passion in life to help people fix the person inside of them first, because that's the person you're bringing with you to your appointments. That's the person you're frankly bringing with you when you're negotiating with another client or firm across the table or a judge. Sales or not, you're bringing that person everywhere with you. And the better relationship you have with that person, the more confident you're going to show up, the more relatable you're going to be, the more transparent you're going to be. People are going to be compelled to work with you. And I've learned this through my own very difficult journeys of realizing I wasn't showing up as the person I really am inside. And so I always like to start with a really high level reframe because I mentioned it. Authenticity is a buzzword and it's way overused and very misunderstood. And everybody has a different definition for it. And frankly, people are tired of hearing about it, but we're going to talk about it.
Okay. Well, let me do this real quick. Sorry to interrupt you, but
No, you're fine.
I'm going to encourage our listeners to hang with us for at least 10 minutes because right now they're going like, well, you're not talking about how I make more money. And,
Yes, I am.
and my relationships rock. I mean, just ask me. I'm amazing. And, if you don't know that I'm amazing, just ask my staff, the people I pay, and they'll tell you I'm amazing. And if you don't think I'm amazing, just, ask me. I mean, I'll tell you how amazing I am. But you're really talking about something completely different. And I know you're in California, so authenticity might show up like like on every piece of marketing out there, like authentic real estate or authentic this or authentic law firms, right? So I'm just going to request that everybody gives us a 10-minute grace so you can lay down some groundwork here, so you can lay down some groundwork because really what you're talking about is something different. And the core of it, the foundation of it is how you can be more effective, not only at helping people, but actually growing your business and making more money. So this is about money, isn't it?
It is about, it's 1,000% about money. It's a
Okay.
it all comes down to, again, that person you're bringing with you on the appointment. And I love your joke about California because I usually start every presentation outside of California, and no offense to anyone in California if I offend you, but everything you've heard about California is true. It's usually how I start most of my presentations when I'm out of the state. But anyways, I digress. So authenticity. And here's why I think people are tired of hearing about it. is because we talk about authenticity like you have to do something. Be authentic. Just be yourself. Be is a very go do something word. I believe that authenticity isn't about doing anything. It's about undoing everything that isn't you. Hands down, quit trying to be authentic. Part of the reason you're struggling is you're trying to be someone you're not. And I give people permission to stop doing that. And I teach you permissions that you actually have to give permission to yourself. And the great part about this is I don't ask you to do anything else. I'm not asking you to go implement a new strategy. I'm not asking you to implement a new system. I'm not asking you to learn a new dialogue. I'm simply asking you and giving you permission to undo those things that truly aren't you. That's where confidence, because confidence isn't something you do. Confidence doesn't come as a result of something. Confidence comes by being you and peeling back those layers and living in your most authentic version of yourself, your most authentic voice, obviously with some candor and some conviction and some emotional intelligence built in. But at the end of the day, being authentic isn't about doing anything better or being anything more. It's about undoing everything that isn't you.
Well, something tells me there's a personal story in here.
There is.
There's a painful lesson in here somewhere. So
Yeah.
let's talk about the painful lesson, if you don't mind.
Yeah, there's a couple of painful lessons, and I always like to really get kind of deep into. I've coined something because my first lesson happened when I was 17 years old, and I've now reframed them as 17 moments, and I teach this across the country. How we all have these 17 moments in our lives that put our back up against a wall, made us question everything about ourselves, made us ask the hard questions of, can I do this? Who am I? Did I just ruin my life? Right? The minute I start saying that, you immediately have a 17 moment that comes to your mind. My 17 moment happened when I was 17 years old with a positive pregnancy test. And it was a moment where my entire life and my entire career and everything I thought I was going to do in education got put on the back burner. And I always say these 17 moments aren't meant to break us, they're meant to break us open. They aren't meant to define us, they're meant to refine us. They're meant to teach us more of exactly who we really are. The problem is we cover them up and then we start performing. We try to hide these 17 moments, pretend like they never happened, and then start performing in our real life of who we think we're supposed to be. My second big 17 moment happened in my mid 30s when I started suffering. Well, I've suffered from extreme hair loss my entire adult life. But in my mid 30s, it got really bad. And I had alopecia spots and was losing my hair at a rapid rate. And I ended up almost being completely bald on top of my head. And I went to a hair transplant surgeon who read life into me and basically told me I have 3 strikes in the hair department and that all of our hair is pre-programmed to fall out at a certain time in our life, and mine wasn't coming back. So I decided to explore human hair alternatives. Long story, come see me on stage to hear the whole story, but long story behind what happened with that. But what ended up happening was I made a courageous decision to pivot to wearing human hair wigs. And when I did that, I decided to rip the Band-Aid off and stop hiding behind this thing I thought was this incredible flaw, which turned out to be genetics and medical. Nothing I can do about it. So I decided to rip the Band-Aid off, stop hiding, and I came out publicly on social media and shared my story. And that was the moment my life changed, because I realized I had been hiding behind so many things in my life. And it turns out when I came out real and raw and authentic and unfiltered, world took notice. Clients took notice. Friends took notice. And what I've learned is people want to do business with humans, and humans aren't perfect. And the second you can peel back those layers and stop hiding behind what you think is such a flaw in yourself and realize it's the biggest strength you've ever been given, when you can lean into those 17 moments and you can realize that they actually show you more of who you are. Because the way I summarize all this is we don't learn anything from our successes. We think life is all about success. We think the next success is going to propel us to the next success. And although those are stepping stones and that's true, you don't actually learn anything about yourself from success. You learn everything about yourself from your 17 moments. You're just not allowing that person to show up. And once that person starts showing up, that's when your business and your life change.
I'm overwhelmed with making my list right now. I'm just saying.
Yeah, you can have more than one 17 moment as a matter of
Like,
fact.
like
And
you only gave me
and they
17. I'm like,
don't, they don't have a timeline that's perfect for us. And they have very interesting ways of arriving, and they don't give us any notice. Let's just call it that. They
yeah,
don't
you don't
tell us when
schedule
they're
these
going to
things.
arrive. No,
Yeah,
I
you
love
don't
that. Don't schedule these things.
you don't
That's great.
schedule these things.
Yeah.
This is our tagline is great practice, great life, and I always joke that sometimes my great life. I look at because we use this very interesting my great life planner, and we have this whole
Oh,
focusing
I love
system
that.
around it. And I'm like, because it begins with the question, what's a great life look like to you? And this is what I love about your conversation with authentically you, like what's you? And a lot of lawyers are caught on what I call an achievement path versus a greatness path.
Yes.
And
Yes.
they're running somebody else's race, like they're doing somebody else's race. And the authentic moment, like you said, the 17 moments, I'm somewhere in the 70 moments right now. But you're a lot younger than me, so you might be able to catch up. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm looking at this and I'm like going, yeah, you're making some very profound points and very interesting points. The And I know right now there's some people listening to this and other people going, but what's this got to do with making money?
Hmm.
So what do you think?
It has everything to do with who shows up on the appointment. Because here's what, so my four permissions, just to give you kind of the high level
Do
overview.
it.
The four permissions are the permission to stop hiding, the permission to stand in your truth, which is all about we got to stop people pleasing, we got to stop telling people what they want to hear, which is what I'm going to circle back to. The permission to embrace self-doubt. We put self-doubt in a container like it's a bad thing, right? And then there's self-doubt's big sister, imposter syndrome, that we throw around like the wind blows now. And we've given imposter syndrome a completely negative connotation. And I flip it around as imposter syndrome isn't a negative thing. If you're feeling imposter syndrome, guess what? It means you're growing. You can't feel imposter syndrome unless you're actually pushing yourself to be something better and to grow into new rooms and new opportunities and new situations. And then the last is permission to step into your power, right? I have a mantra: the future you is already inside of you. The next version of you is already here. You just have to step into it. And so, circling back to making money, it comes down to that person that shows up on the appointment. And I can authentically speak about this because I was her. I was the girl who showed up on every appointment with the perfect PowerPoint presentation, the perfect stats, the perfect script, telling the client everything I thought they wanted to hear. And I would walk away without the contract, without the client, and feel defeated. I'm like, I just nailed that script. I nailed that presentation. What is going on? What I realized was I was showing up as a performer and not an expert.
Bingo. That's awesome. Hey, it's Steve. Sorry to interrupt this conversation with Barb, but I want to point out to you that Barb is going to be one of our keynotes at the summit this year. So the summit's November 6th and 7th, 2025 in Orlando. The new website for the summit is atticussummit.com. Now, I want to encourage you that if you haven't already registered for the summit, go ahead and take action. We've got some great speakers. Barb's one of them. And as you're listening to Barb talk about referral-based marketing, I think she's going to be incredibly powerful, impactful to their life. In addition to her, we have Dre Baldwin, and we also have Matt Immersion. So we have three fantastic keynote speakers. Each one's designed to help you innovate, be inspired, and take those ideas and convert them to invoices. So I'm delighted about this year's summit. The registrations are open. Now, I just want to warn you, last year the hotel sold out, the summit sold out. So if you don't register now, you may not have a seat or a room at the event hotel. So check out the show notes. I look forward to seeing you there. That's bingo. Say it again.
I was showing up as a performer, not an expert.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. I love it. So everything that you just said, I can totally get behind and push. I mean, this is fantastic stuff. Say more about showing up as the expert, not the performer.
So showing up at the expert, standing in your truth, right? You guys are attorneys. You have people are not coming to you because they can do it by themselves. They're coming to you because they can't do what they need to do without you. They aren't coming to you with all the answers. It's why getting a law degree and passing the bar is one of the highest achievements. Besides, I would put obviously doctors in that same world, right? You guys have to achieve, you have to know so much about so many things. You really are experts in your field, right? And so when you don't show up as that expert and you don't stand in your truth and you let the client control your performance, and all of that comes from self doubt. All of that comes from thinking I'm not good enough. All of that comes from my voice doesn't matter. All of that comes from not having a successful practice where you need that client in front of you to sign the contract so badly that you shapeshift yourself into who you think they want you to be. And I know that because I lived it.
Yeah, stay there for a second. I mean, that's great. So there's a couple of things I want to interpret for our audience, and I'm going to do it in reverse order. So everybody will have to be patient with me. I'm going to put a link in our show notes for your podcast on imposter syndrome, which is fantastic. I am going to suggest to everybody who's listening that part of the reason that a lot of people can't be their authentic self and have to play the part is because they're doing a bad job on cash flow and marketing, which is one of the things that you covered in our first podcast together. And then the one thing I want our members to listen to, our audience to listen to, is that the reason people hire you is because the definition of a professional for me is somebody who can ask you questions that you can't ask yourself, because the complexity of the system that you're now swimming in is so complex that you're not even sure the right question. And sometimes the lawyers get confused that really at the end of the day, what people are bringing to you is a complex problem in their life to solve inside a complex bureaucratic system that they're now part of. And your job is to help them go through that in an emotionally, and I hate to use this term, but kind of an emotionally empowering, if not safe way. And the most powerful lawyers I know are the ones that wrap themselves not around the case, but wrap themselves around the client and do everything they can to shepherd and create a great journey for the client. And most lawyers are still in the realm of what really matters is how smart I am. Like the client's coming to me, how smart I am. Where you're trying to pivot them is how can I help you? What can I do to wrap my arms around your problem intellectually, emotionally? And how can I wrap my arms around you to carry you through this time period, whatever it may be, whether it's divorce or, something simple or whatever it may be. So it's very profound. I mean, it's very profound. I hope that most people gave us the 10 minutes I requested.
Well, I'll give them a bonus to everything you just said, and you have to put this in whatever container is right for the person in front of you. But you mentioned it, to back up a second. You mentioned it. It's all about emotional intelligence, right? If you stand in your truth and you show up authentic, and you're like, but I'm the expert. You can absolutely be a different person that's never going to get hired. Okay, like let's be honest. You can be arrogant. You can be have no show that you care about them, all of that. So emotional intelligence is huge. But something that I teach everyone I talk to when I talk about standing in your truth and I talk about showing up as the expert and not the performer is that you also have to come at them with this mindset. I'd rather disappoint you today than 6 months from now. I'd rather disappoint you today than 30 days from now. And what that does is that tells them, I'd rather tell you what you absolutely need to hear than what you want to hear. I'd rather disappoint you right now on this appointment before you hire me than if you hire me and I tell you everything you want to hear so that you hire me, I'm going to disappoint you 30 days from now or 6 months from now or a year from now when everything I know you need to know right now, I'm not telling you. And when you put it in that container, I know for a fact the person on the other side kind of sits back and goes, oh my God, they're not purposely trying to argue with me. They're not purposely trying to tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. They're not saying some line that I was taught in my career, which is like, how many times have you appeared in front of a judge? I do this every day. Like I was taught to say that in my real estate career. I was taught to say, how many times have you sold a house this year? I've sold 50 of them. That's a very arrogant way to say what I just said. But when you reframe it into, I'd rather disappoint you right now. Listen, Steve, I know this is hard information to hear. I know you came in here expecting me to tell you something different. But at the end of the day, I'd rather disappoint you right now than, and whatever time frame makes sense for your type of law case, whatever you're practicing.
It's great because it requires you as a lawyer to get incredibly clear on what type of person, what type of case you're willing to represent and why. And be very clear when someone's not a good fit and why they're not a good fit. I've fired business owner clients because they're difficult, like they're difficult people. And I've always said, look, you're a wonderful human being, but you're a terrible client. You're just a terrible client. And I know that you think you're like the most remarkable person that we've ever worked with, but you're actually pretty difficult to work with, and go through the list of kind of like the expectations that I have for what a great client looks like. And you're not doing any of those things. So let's go ahead and part now while we're both, I'm thinking that you're a great person and I can refer you to somebody else and let you run over their staff and be mean to them. Um, then continue to get stressed every time you call me or every time my staff comes in and says, hey, Danny called today and he was very upset about this or what have you. So it's wonderful because it allows you to draw a line in the sand. Or, right, so they draw the line, but put a wall between you and people that you're like, no, you're not a good fit for me as a human being. I don't want to hang out with you. And the cash isn't worth it because if you're only taking it for money, you know what the deal's about. So you're like, okay, you're just not, it doesn't work for me. And I love that because you have to authentically, I know I sound very Californian, but
I love it.
authentically get clear in my mind, this works or doesn't work for me as a person.
Yeah.
It's
And
very
the
powerful.
only way that you can stand in your confidence and the only way you can speak your truth and the only way you can do any of that is if you stop hiding who you really are. Right. And sometimes I'm not saying that we don't have to work on ourselves. This is all about working on yourself. And sometimes you do have to figure out who you really are, which is why I go back to those 17 moments, because those 17 moments left you a ton of clues about who you really are. But at the end of the day, that's why the confidence matters so much. That's why this episode matters so much. Because I don't care how good you are, and I don't care how much you know, and I don't care how great of an attorney you are. At the end of the day, you're in sales. And the person that you're bringing with you to the appointment matters. That's the person they're hiring. And I also always go with this idea of when you show up as authentically as you, when you show up as the real you don't have to remember which version of you steps into the room. You don't have to remember which version of you you're bringing with you to the follow up appointment, right? You don't have to worry about that. And it takes work. And this doesn't happen overnight. And this has taken years of me going and growing through these processes. But I promise you, confidence is everything. And confidence is already inside of you. You've just layered that person up. We all know it.
So do you think this would flow out into how lawyers price their services? Do you think that their lack of confidence or the lack of feeling
Oh, yeah.
connected with who that you think so?
Oh, yes. Because pricing and showing your value is 100% a symptom of people pleasing. It's 100% a symptom of people pleasing.
Oh, you need to do this slow. You got to do it nice and slow because I promise you a couple of people right now that are not listening to that sentence. So go really slow, really
It's
slow.
100% a symptom of people pleasing. And and also not having enough dollars in the bank account, right? The more leads you have, the more stuff you have in your pipeline, I promise you, you will always show up more firm on your fees and your value and your pricing, 1,000%. But I believe even when I've had a full pipeline, even when I've been super busy, not standing firm in my pricing or my value inside my pricing was 100% a symptom of people pleasing. It was thinking I had to be someone different and didn't have the value that the person in front of me was trying to see. And the second you stand in that truth of, I'm the expert, I know my value, I'm good at what I do, I'm going to provide you exceptional customer service. And of course, there's dialogues and scripts you can learn for all of that. But at the end of the day, I know who I am. I know the value I provide. You're not people pleasing. People pleasing is telling someone what they want to hear. So if someone says you're not worth the fee you're charging, they're not the right client for you. Period. As long as you're charging the right fee. And that's for you to help them with, right? Throughout the coaching you do. There obviously is a formula to that. However, If you know all of that's right and in alignment, then you not standing in that truth is because of the confidence inside of you. That's all it comes down to. And that's why you have to fix this relationship first.
It's fantastic. I think back to a time when I was actively practicing, and one of my friends, who's a very intelligent lawyer, called me and said he was doing me a favor. He called me and said, "Hey, Steve, I just want to let you know you're charging too much." And at the time, I'm like going, I think I'm really underpricing because I'm like 10 for 10 on these very complex cases. And, he's a friend. So I was like, well, why do you say that? He goes, well, because I'm really smart, meaning himself. I'm double board certified, which he is. And you're charging 3 times what I'm charging. And you should not be charging 3 times what I'm charging because you're nowhere near as intelligent as I am. And I was like, I said, thanked him. I thanked him for the feedback. I said, that's really great. I said, now, I'm not the brightest guy. That's clear. You pointed that out. Maybe since you're smarter than I am, you should charge what I'm charging because you're really, really intelligent and I'm clearly not. Tanked his practice in about 90 days because he started to match my pricing and he wasn't prepared for it. So as I look back, my process for weeding out anything but A plus plus cases was a really, I don't want to say aggressive, but real firm process. I knew who I want to represent. I knew what they were like. I knew what the problem was, and I knew how to solve the problem at a very, very expedited and high touch level. So I was very, very clear about my offer and very clear about what I wanted, who I wanted to serve, which was the exact opposite of his demographic, the exact opposite of his demographic. So I think back at this because I look at your 17 moments, in my case, like 75, maybe 7,500 moments,
It's okay.
right? And most of that process was created from mistakes I'd made, like my friend, by falling into the trap of this is about my intellectual gifts. And really, what I was doing was finding a shortcut for very, very busy CEOs and very busy law firm owners, very busy lawyers, very busy at one point, 2 head of departments for hospitals, NASA executive, all coming in with this particular problem that their family was going through. And it wasn't a money issue for them, it was a time issue. It was never how much is this going to cost? It was like, how quickly can you get it done? And so my pricing was all about expedited service and getting it done quickly and eliminating as much stress and pressure on client. So as I listened to you, I had to get really clear at that point in time in my life, who was it that I was serving and why? And I had to get away from my friends who were serving a different clientele. You bring some fascinating things, and I know you don't have a lot of time today. Any last words of advice you'd like to give us on how to either find our 17 moments, unpack this, take it further, make money off of it? Because I promise you, there are people listening to this and like going, I don't get it. Like the whole pricing thing, like being people policing around pricing, that whole thing just went right by a lot of people. I promise. I promise.
Well,
So
Steve, I would say that it all starts with us. Again, I'm going to say it a million times over. The more authentic relationship you have with yourself, the better relationship you're going to have with others. The better you're going to serve people, the better you're going to show up, the more you're going to stand in your truth, the more you're going to be able to do all of those things without any feelings of regret or frustration. The other thing that, I would leave everybody with is the moments where you do doubt yourself. For instance, when your friend called you and you probably thought to yourself, is there something wrong with me? Is there,
I did. I
is there
totally.
something wrong with my pricing? Those are moments of growth and you need to grow with those. And then the last thing I would say is, the future you is inside of you. And whether that's another version that you're stepping into because you're growing, or whether that's just you need to be more you, that person is the person you need to bring with you on these appointments and these sales appointments and in front of judges or in front of clients. That person you need to bring is already inside of you. All you have to do is stop hiding. You have to peel back the layers, peel back the onion. And I'm not just doing the woo woo. You're perfectly you and you don't have to do any work. And, Just, be
They're going to
everything.
kick you out of
Like,
California, Barb. They're going to throw you out. They're going to grab you
I
and
know,
throw you out of
I
California.
know I want to move out of California. So that's a whole other podcast. But um, I give you permission to stop hiding. I give you permission to stand in your truth. I give you permission to embrace your self doubt. And I give you permission to step into who you are, your power, because we're all powerful. We all have everything we need. Sometimes it's just uncovering that and going back to some tough moments. And I do an entire workshop on 17 moments because there's so much to learn about ourselves from those moments. It wasn't until I went back to those moments, to 17 for me, 36, had one last year, whole nother conversation. And I know I'll have more in my future. Going through those 17 moments has taught me more about myself and who I really am. And then when you get the courage for that person to show up on the appointments, you don't have to pretend to be anybody else. You don't have to conform to someone else's standards. You can stand firm in your value. You can stand firm in your pricing. And guess what? You're a much happier human because of it, because you're not pretending to be anybody you're not. And then lastly, I leave you with, you laughed, but it's so true. You don't have to remember which version of you is supposed to show up today. You don't have to play the game anymore. As long as you're not a jerk, right? And most people aren't deep down inside. Part of the jerkiness is all layers you've put on yourself. It's not who you really are. You just got to peel those back.
So you did a beautiful job of running right at the core target that I love to talk to people about, which is, what does it take for you to have a great practice and a great life? And being authentically you, very California woo-woo statement, is really what you are bringing to the table. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you for sharing your 17 moments. I want to thank you for being generous with your wisdom, your advice, and you were just fabulous as always. So Barb, thank you. I really, really greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for having me. And it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for joining this week's episode of Great Practice, Great Life. Please tune in weekly to get the next episode. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, like, and don't hesitate to share it with a friend who you think this episode can help. With that, thanks, and I hope you enjoy next week's episode.